Hello, today we're going to give an update on the newest release from Sage. It's everything restaurant and hospitality groups need to know for Sage Intacct. Today's agenda, you're going to learn a little bit about Tablespoon. I'm going to introduce you to Brian, who's doing our amazing presentation today, and he's going to give you a release, and then we're going to close it out. So first, a little bit about Tablespoon. Tablespoon specializes in restaurant growth. We've been helping the restaurant industry since 2007, and we offer outsourced accounting, Sage Intacct accounting software, and consulting services. I'd like to introduce you to Brian Puckett. He has over 20 years of experience in finance and accounting, and he has been implementing Sage Intacct since 2018. He's Tablespoon's senior Sage Intacct implementation consultant. Brian lives in Nashville, and we're very excited to welcome him to the Tablespoon team in July. So let's give him a warm welcome.
Thank you, Kate. So let's go through a few of the highlights of this 2023 R3 release. Accounts payable vendor approvals, which is one of the most requested enhancements that has been long awaited and much well received. We'll go through the early adopter for bank transition assistant or transaction assistant, also to tracking payments with doc sequencing in the accounts receivable module. In the R1 release for 2023, there was the enhancements for the vendor views. There's now many other areas that we'll go through within Intacct that have the list enhancements. Also, too, a couple things with the general ledger. There's now the option to restrict GL transactions at the entity level, as well as excluding adjustments from the trial balance report if you don't do any year-end adjustments. And then finally, we'll talk about the match tolerance for purchasing transactions. Next. So the accounts payable vendor approvals, as I mentioned, this is one of the most requested features that has been long sought after. Now you have the ability to approve vendors directly within Sage Intacct with the premise of being able to make sure your vendor records are completely correct and the information used in accounts payable and purchasing transactions are as they should be. While a vendor record is being approved, any new accounts payable and purchasing transactions for that particular vendor can be saved as drafts, but they cannot be posted. Once the vendor is approved, then the transactions can be posted. While a vendor is awaiting approval, or if the vendor is declined, users are not able to do the following three things. They cannot post accounts payable and purchasing transactions for that vendor. They cannot edit existing transactions for that vendor. And finally, they are not able to select vendor transactions for payments. However, while you're in this transitions, users can save new transactions as draft, even for submitted or declined vendors. This allows you to capture new transactions as they come in, then post the item after the vendor is finally approved. This also means that incoming draft transactions from AP automation can be saved normally as well. Next. Another feature, and this is an early adopter program, so you do actually have to sign up and register for this bank transactions assistant feature. And this allows you to streamline and your receive payments workflow in accounts receivable while accelerating the reconciliation process for bank reconciliations. How it basically works is that you're able to assign customers to bank transactions and then receive multiple payments for multiple customers, all from the bank transaction page. After you receive the payments, then you have the ability to post payments within Intacct, and the bank transactions automatically match for reconciliation which can streamline your effort in completing a bank reconciliation. Also, too, for multi-entity, multi-currency companies, you're able to receive advances and payments at the entity level. Basically, what's involved is setting up, assigning customers to bank transactions, and then next. And once that is done, after you've got those customers assigned to the bank transactions, you can actually begin receiving the payments or creating advances, which allows you to receive them in bulk. If there's no invoice for a customer, you can actually create an advance using the new AR advances template. As noted here, you'll see that you need to have permissions and cash management, the feature receive payments from bank transactions to be able to utilize this feature. So make sure that the users involved in this process have those permissions and they're able to utilize this transactions assistant. Next. Now, within accounts receivable, there is now a new feature called tracking payments with doc sequencing. So this allows you to track payments easier with document sequencing within accounts receivable for payments. So you can refer to specific posted payments and help with payment tracking and reconciliation. So for example, if you've posted payments that were applied to multiple invoices and adjustments, you can create a custom report based on the payment ID to see which transactions the payments were actually applied to. So as you see there in that first column, you're able to see that particular payment ID for the first two customers. And once you set this up, you have all the posted payments. You'll be able to see the payment ID. Existing payment postings will not have a payment ID. So as you'll see in that first column there, the difference in those that have posted payments and those that have not. Next. So as I mentioned at the outset, the R1 2023 release included new enhancements in terms of the list features for vendors. Now the same functionality to be able to personalize your list views, use all the advanced filters, manage lists, and record details side by side, and among other things, has now been expanded to attachments, attachment folders, the class, department, and location dimensions, as well as tax details, tax schedules, and the tax schedule map. These are currently in a beta format right now, so you'll have to click on the turn on list beta checkbox at the top of each screen where these menus are within Intacct. And Intacct is going to gradually release all these features as far as standard functionality over time. Although I don't know the exact timeline, but my sense would be this will all roll out in terms of basic functionality and standard functionality over the next 2 to 3 releases. Next. So another feature that Intacct has rolled out in this release is the ability to restrict GL transactions to the entity level. In a lot of cases, there are justifications for entering transactions at the top level, but if there are scenarios where you want to make sure that transactions that should be relegated to the entity level stay there, as you see here, there is a checkbox under the general ledger configuration that now allows you to utilize this feature and to be able to restrict, where applicable, general ledger transactions, journal entries, etc., at the entity level, and keep them there. Next. As well, on the general ledger, another enhancement that I think is very handy, especially for organizations that don't necessarily do any kind of year-end adjustments. Some people like to call those period 13 adjustments that come from an audit. If you don't have the need for those adjustments and don't want the columns to show up on your trial balance for adjustments, there is the checkboxes you see here, also as well set up under the general ledger configuration that you can check that on and exclude adjustments. And therefore, when you go to run the trial balance, the debit and credit for adjustments will not show up on the trial balance report. And we'll give you a cleaner report if those columns are not necessary. Next. And finally, Intacct has also rolled out match tolerances for purchasing. And so what this gives you the ability to do is set proper amounts for what you've ordered. So with match tolerances within Intacct, you can automatically compare the quantities and unit prices that appear on converted transactions. So for example, if the workflow is to convert purchase orders to vendor invoices, Intacct compares the quantities and unit prices between the two transactions. When you preset, as you see here, quantity tolerance percentages and price tolerance percentages, and anytime that you are an outlier to those defined tolerances, Intacct will actually notify you of those transactions that have went out of the bounds of those thresholds that you've set up. The nice thing about this is, as you can see, is you can set this up per transaction definition. So if there are certain transaction types that you want to have a wider range of tolerances, you have the ability to customize them and do this at the transaction type level. Next. So what it will do, as I mentioned, it will flag any of the transactions with where either the quantity, unit price, or both is higher. And so users with the proper permissions can actually edit and change to make sure that the transactions will stay within the boundaries of the tolerance thresholds. Next.
All right, that seems to be the last slide there. Thank you so much, Brian. This is wonderful information. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to visit our website at tbsp.com or reach out to me, Kate Johnson, at kjohnson@tbsp.com. Again, thank you so much, and I hope everybody has a wonderful day.